Okay, we're live. Okay, so I have a plan here, but every time I switch windows or something, it stops sharing. So whenever I do that, just ping me and I'll bring it up again. So I'm just gonna leave this up there. About relaunching CGRAN. This is what we're here to talk about today. And actually, one of the things we've all sort of agreed on whenever we talked about this was to not necessarily combine, but make CGRAN and PyBOMBs integrate very closely with each other. So the PyBOMBs recipes would probably be a good database for CGRAN, and from there, a couple of other things sort of naturally fall into place. Now, there's a couple of subcomponents to this whole thing, and basically, so we really need a couple of volunteers to help us with that. There'll be several things to do, and what I'd ideally get today is a kind of a I hate using the word, but I'm just going to call it a specification for the new CGRAN, whatever that would include, and what the changes are for PyBOMBs in order to make that happen. And so there's a couple of different components. So first of all, there's going to be the website. I don't know if I marked this. Yeah, you can see what I've highlighted. So the website, which is what used to be cgran.org, it would probably still be cgran.org, but it'll be a new website, something that we'll have to come up with. And it should be something automatically generated. We don't want to manually maintain anything. And it's so when CGRAN was originally when we had it for the first time, GitHub wasn't a thing, and now that it is, and pretty much everyone uses GitHub or something similar, we probably just want to use the GitHub pages that people use, for actual content and stuff. So CGRAN should literally be a very smart list of the out of tree modules. So including block descriptions maybe, but only stuff that we can automatically scrape. Now, Nathan actually, great. So Nathan actually prototyped something. Thanks very much. And this is what it looks like. And this is already, I guess, very close to where we want to be, at least functionally. So I'm not even, so design is already better than anything that I could have done, but it's maybe not exactly what we want. So this is a list of out of tree modules, and I can actually click on some of these. So I don't know, like DVBT, click on that, and I get some more information. There's a list of blocks, and there's links to the repository and also the CGRAN mirror, which I'll get to in a second. Yeah, the maintainer, that kind of stuff, etc. And there's more functions up here, and I've kind of listed ideas that I've collected from diverse both mailing lists and IRC threads. So what do we want on this mailing list? As already said, so we'll have some kind of cron job, compiling this website every, I don't know, 2 hours, something like that, maybe even less than that. And it'll include like name, description, where can people download it. This is already something that is not well defined. An activity index, sort of like how many commits have happened. Maybe there's actually some kind of GitHub activity monitor that we can sort of grab, and if it's something else than GitHub, then we'll just have to make up something. Required GNU Radio version. We don't even actually have the capabilities to do that, so this is some other task that we'll have to figure out how to do. And then, of course,
Actually, comment?
Yeah.
So I think that should actually be a range, because what will happen is we'll have projects that require GNU Radio 3.7 that won't work with 3.8, and we should have the ability for the maintainer to mark, the latest version tested, so that I know that, if I had, say an out of tree requires, at least 3.5, but has never been tested with 3.7. That's good to know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the maintainer can just add, yes, I've tested and verified this works with, whatever version of GNU Radio. But you need at least this.
Exactly. Can someone actually edit this as we're talking about it, so I can just keep the original open? I don't have to do that. Someone volunteering? Nope. Alfredo?
Yeah, sure, I could do it.
Thanks.
What do you... So the required GNU Radio version, you want me to change it to what?
Yeah, a range, sort of also include a maximum tested version or something.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, then you click on an out of tree module, and it gives you more information. So Nathan, how did you do that block list? Was that do you have some? Is that part of your codes that sort of scrapes the out of tree module? Nathan?
Yeah. So basically, I used C tags and just kind of looked for a constructor and. Yeah, it's not very fancy, and in fact, if you actually use it, you can tell it's broken in several places. So, let's see.
Well, I mean, anything that you wrote is better than what we have right now, which is nothing. So.
Yeah, so if you look here, I think I'm sharing my screen. If you look at the data size, like there's that parentheses that's left there. So it's kind of crude, but if you look in here, scripts. There's just some Python to basically I use C tags to parse through. I have a local clone and I use C tags and just parse that for all this stuff.
We might actually. I'm just thinking. So grmodtool, has some block parsing capabilities, and maybe we can actually, I don't know, put something in there. Have grmodtool do the CGRAN or something like that. But that's details. I think we don't have to talk about that right now.
Yeah. You might also want to parse the GRC XML, but another discussion.
And then the HTML5. I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, there's all kinds of things we can do, but I think having the actual list, so something like this, that is the the main ingredient. That's the first thing that we need. So I mean, we could even make this link a link to the original repository for now, and just like skip the details, and like reiterate on the CGRAN thingy as we go along. So as long as we have something like this going, then I think we're good to start. And I mean, we haven't actually discussed this, but there's no reason why this can't live on the GNU Radio website, right? Web server. Jonathan.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, I think it would make the most sense.
Okay, so the other thing that we need to do is, and this is sort of like also not the highest priority, but the CGRAN, like in its name, already has the word archive. So it would be nice to have some kind of backup, so like some central repository or something, which is then the archive, and we could use that to we can use that to run our the software that figures out the block names, etc. And maybe we can even do that on GitHub. I don't see why not. We could just have like another user, like call it CGRAN or whatever, and then he just forks all the repositories into his own repository space. And then if it's not from GitHub, then he just checks out the subversion or whatever. And if we do that, then we have no issues with traffic, etc. And it's easily accessible, and anyone can download it easily, etc., etc. Something that was suggested, but has received mixed feelings about is that we have one CGRAN super repository that includes all the archives as submodules, so you can sort of check out all CGRAN at once. I mean, that would be easy to have. There's no reason not to have it, but I'm not entirely sure we really need it. Now, there's been some suggestions to actually change out of tree modules themselves. That is very slightly. Basically, the only change would be that we add a manifest file into into the module. So something that we can automatically read out, and it would have all of these things that we'd otherwise have to manually provide, including, for example, the icon file, which would be something that the App Store could then use. And then, of course, like stuff like tags when you search and maintainer names, etc., etc. And so then of course this is supposed to be integrated with PyBOMB somehow, so they should work very closely. Actually, there's one thing that I've already suggested, but I've forgotten to add that. Alfredo, maybe you can do that, is as a suggestion that we split out the recipes into a separate repository to make it easier to add recipes. So we don't have to change like the same repository when we're changing PyBOMB's code, and when we're adding recipes. Okay, so that's the basic overview. So what I'd like to get done today is sort of figure out what exactly it is that we want. So sort of anything that's ambiguous on this page, sort of make a decision, and then hopefully find people who will volunteer to actually implement this stuff. Okay, let's start at the beginning. So the CGRAN website. Is there anything on here, or is there anything missing on here that we should definitely have?
To me, the manifest should define, if we do the manifest for the auditory modules, which I think is a really good idea, I think that should define what shows up on the CGRAN website, so that they're essentially have the entire CGRAN website be automated by just pulling, knowing where to point to find PyBOMBs, and then looking at the PyBOMBs recipes for all of the auditory modules, and then using that to parse the manifest and put up all that information.
Yeah, Martin, have you ever used the Python package index?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so it's a similar idea. It's not a text file. It's actually variables that you assign values to, but you do the same kind of thing as a manifest before you upload it to the index. So I think this idea would work pretty well.
And Android does the same thing, the Android manifest, but that's a XML file. So it's definitely a well used model. And I'm just thinking, like, the more that we can automate all of the CGRAN functionality, so that there's nobody that has to go in there and manually enter stuff when a new project comes along. Kind of as soon as it's in PyBOMBs, all of the information that the author has provided within the manifest gets propagated to the website.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still an issue, I think, though, of who writes the PyBOMBs recipe, if not the maintainer of the project himself, and is there a threshold defining what gets included and what doesn't get included as a recipe in the PyBOMBs repository?
So if all the metadata about the project is in the project manifest file, does the PyBOMBs recipe need to be special in any way?
Yeah, that's a good. I was just gonna say that we can probably we might even not need the recipe, but we probably need something inside PyBOMB, something some kind of cached version. But no one actually has to write the recipe by hand, because if we just design the manifest well enough, then it'll just be, we can just automatically generate the recipe from the manifest.
You're talking about the compilation and things like that?
Well, most PyBOMBs recipes will just need to inherit the CMake template or whatever that PyBOMBs uses. So
yeah,
how much of the project information should actually be in the PyBOMBs recipe versus just using the project manifest?
Yeah, I mean, let's distinguish between the stuff that's in the manifest versus the stuff that needs to be in the recipe for compilation. I don't think that part can be automated. But if it's just PyBOMBs being smart enough to go fish out the manifest from the auditory module, that's great, because then the recipe itself can stay, sort of technically related on how to compile this project, not metadata about it.
Well, we could. I mean, like I'd say 85% of all out-of-tree modules will have the exact same recipe, except for the Git URL, the name. Yeah, and that's it. So
I've had to do quite a bit of digging through recipes in building the live DVD image, and they're not all.
Well, Well,
perfect
some
like
are
that.
very different, but that's usually the ones that aren't exactly out of tree modules. Obviously, the dependencies or something.
Yeah.
Dependencies also, yeah, they are different.
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of having the PyBOMB's recipes stay the way they are, and just adding the intelligence to PyBOMBs to be able to go get the extra metadata we're describing here out of the manifest file in the out-of-tree module itself. And maybe there's a local cache, of that, but ultimately, what that means is the recipe can stay focused on how to build an installable version of the software, and the metadata is just managed by the project maintainer, in a file in his own repo.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, we shouldn't be duplicating the information in the recipe and the.
But the other question, though, again, is do we have a threshold? Is there a decision-making process on whether or not a submitted recipe that's pointing to an out-of-tree with a manifest actually goes into PyBOMBs or not? There's a quality question, and then just do we want to have hundreds and hundreds of out-of-tree modules, sort of unknown provenance?
Well, that's
I may be worrying about it too much.
Yeah, I mean that is a very that is a completely different problem from what I was thinking about talking about today. I mean basically we already have that, I guess, because Nathan just pointed out in chat. So Tim has to approve all the pull requests that go into PyBOMB. So we kind of already have we have some kind of moderation in that thing.
Yeah.
And if it's not a recipe in PyBOMBs, then it won't show up in a regular PyBOMB search or install or whatever.
Well, so that's I think we should make that explicit. If there isn't a working PyBOMB recipe, it doesn't show up on CGRAN.
Yeah.
And so that means it has to have passed that moderation gate as well.
But I find it hard to imagine a scenario where we don't want new out-of-tree modules.
Well, I mean, CGRAN accumulated a lot of, it's where grad student projects go to die kind of things. And I hate to put it that way, but the maintainership of those projects was pretty poor. So what I don't want to have is a new user of GNU Radio go to PyBOMBs and, 3 out of 4 of the project he tries to use, either fail or, the blocks, crash or things like that. So I guess if it's on GNURadio.org and it's part of the GNU Radio PyBOMBs, I think it should imply at least some amount of, that this is something you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's where CGRAN sort of fell, was that it became, a historical archive, not a working archive.
So I mean that is. So that also means that we have to check projects once they're in, and not only when they when they submit the pull request for the recipe. So a project might sound very interesting and useful when it's launched, but then if it bit rots, then eventually it'll become useless. But then it's been in PyBOMBs for a couple of years or in CGRAN. And
sure.
Then we don't have anyone, checking that or vetting that. But if we have like flags, this builds with the current GNU Radio version or stuff like that somehow, that can it'll give you some kind of option to sort by and. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've sort of done informally with the DVD image, is go through all the recipes and pick out the ones that are current, work with 3.7, and are useful kind of things, and leave out ones with problems or 3.6 only, or things like that. So maybe we could formalize that a little bit with some tags or flags, like you say. I may be making more of this than I need to.
I think this is probably not that much of a problem right now. I think we should somehow take care of it. But right now we don't have any CGRAN at all, and I'd rather have one with old modules.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so it looks like this manifest thing is sort of the central issue, which is sort of everything sort of revolves around that. And also, this is like the only thing. This is the only thing that needs to be merged into the main GNU Radio, because if it's supposed to be in every out of 3 module, then it needs to become part of GR module. So anyone who launches a new repository will get a scalable manifest file.
Right.
So I think we should sort of at least figure out a basic format for that. And Alfredo says it reminds him of OE. So if we can sort of agree on a very very basic way to write these files, then someone could probably easily figure out how to formalize them properly. Do we have any precedents for manifest files like this that sort of match our use case? Because I don't want to use XML files.
Right.
I don't know, JSON, plain text.
I mean, JSON has the benefit of integrating nicely with a lot of web page, parsing tools. So does XML in its own way, but I agree. I don't want XML. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would vote for JSON only because plain text is probably going to be too hard to parse automatically.
Right, because we'll have to make our own, and then we can easily screw that up.
So JSON, I think, was like sort of the lightest weight wrapper around text that we could think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think JSON's a good choice.
Well, that's it. I can use JSON. Okay, so apart from the list that I have on my screen here, and Neil just added email address of the maintainer, is there anything else that...
Like a date submitted so we know how stale something might be? Or some kind of a date to indicate
Yeah. Some kind of...
when something occurred in last activity.
Well, those are calculable things rather than something you would put into the manifest, because we know when it was submitted
That's
to
true.
us, and we know when it was last updated.
Yeah, and all these changes are going to be occurring in some Git repository, and I'd hate to see a bunch of commits that are just like, oh, I changed the date on this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So between just automatically calculating, having that automatically calculated date, and the supported GNU Radio version, it's probably sufficient in terms of being able to tell how stale something is.
I think dependencies should probably go in there as well.
Yes.
And the format of the dependencies. I guess it makes sense to use the PyBOMB's recipes, the name of the PyBOMB's recipe.
Well, the author of a manifest file may be working fairly, in a vacuum, and may not know those.
Well, they should know the direct dependencies. Not the whole dependency tree, but like, I use GSL for, some of the computations. So.
Exactly.
So that's something that should live in, that's part of the compilation procedure, right? So that it exists hopefully in some level on the PyBOMB's recipe.
Yeah, I would suggest that the PyBOMB recipes stay where the actual dependencies that refer to other recipes are, and that in the manifest it's a textual description for a human to read to know, oh, this is going to require GSL, it's going to require Armadillo, it's going to require FFTW, whatever. But the recipe takes care of that, not parsing the manifest.
Okay, so say someone needs GSL, then what PyBOMB does for us is you don't have to know the package name, say on Ubuntu or Debian or Fedora, because that is encoded somewhere in the recipe name. You just remember the name of the recipe, which is GSL, and that's why I suggested the name of the recipe when you're defining dependency.
Well, you have short name here, and to me, I would, as a manifest file author, I would think, oh, well, my dependencies will be the other manifest short names as well. And if those are identical to the recipe names, then there's some redundancy there. I'm just leery again of having text files that the manifest author writes be the thing that controls how PyBOMB compiles stuff.
I mean, okay, so let's take a step up. Let's take a step back. So who writes the recipe file? And ideally, no one writes the recipe file. We can automatically generate that from the.
I would say ideally the module author writes the recipe file.
Yeah, I've seen too many quirky recipes that don't work or require extra stuff after PyBOMBs is done to get the thing working and all of that. I would sometimes recipes have to be modified by someone besides the maintainer to make it work.
Okay, so Nathan says the author writes the recipe, but you say we should write the recipe, or at least the recipe.
No, I'm saying sometimes we have to modify them to make them work.
Yeah, because they don't recognize that there is a dependency or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they've already got it installed.
So we still manually.
So the author should write the original version, and then as bugs appear, as it doesn't compile, other people fix it.
Okay, so but the author writes the original version and then submits it to us as a pull request, or does he put it in the out of tree module and we sort of grab it out of there? So
oh, I see.
It could become part of the manifest, the recipe.
Yeah, I see.
So again, the problem is if there's a technical issue with the PyBOMB's recipe and it's actually fetched out of the out of tree module, then we're dependent on the maintainer to update that recipe in order for everything to work.
Yeah.
And if that maintainer is MIA, then we're stuck.
Yeah.
I like the idea that the recipes are in a Git repo, either the same or a separate one from PyBOMBs, under our control. And then, of course, the original one the author can submit, because he knows it's out of tree module.
Yeah.
But then we maintain it after that to keep it working within the whole ecosystem of dependencies inside PyBOMBs.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I think what we can do is we can sort of provide some kind of, I don't know, script or some kind of mechanism to make the initial recipe submission as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Because they always basically look the same. And like if you're running from a repository that is, if you're running on a local clone of a Git repository, you can just like look up the remote. The script could look up the remote and then generate a manifest file, and you can just like send that to PyBOMBs for inclusion, or something like that. Yeah, so I think that is good. That is a good way to do that. So we'll. So we'll keep the recipes in PyBOMBs, and that also means that we can remove them from PyBOMBs when we feel an out of tree module author or maintainer isn't doing their job properly. And but the original recipe comes from the author, and we'll provide some kind of utility to make that as easy as possible to lower the entry barrier to PyBOMBs. PyBOMBs and CGRAN. So, would someone volunteer to draw up a skeleton manifest file? Someone who's worked with JSON files before, ideally.
Okay, sure, I'll do that. That's Chris.
Oh, okay, Chris. Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, maybe you can directly. Yeah, draw up something, show us what you have, and then we'll try and get it into GNU Radio.
It seems like just taking some current modules that already exist and just saying, okay, here's what the existing state of a module. Here's how you put that all in JSON, and we can iterate on that a couple of times if my field names and stuff suck.
Yeah, exactly. Just make sure everything on this list is in the JSON file, and yeah, and that's it.
So it just occurred to me a couple of other things that we may want to have the module author be able to provide, which is some tag names or Git version numbers for like a stable and for a development kind of thing, because there are some out-of-tree projects that do have like a master branch for the stable stuff, but you can also check out a different branch if you want to do have PyBOMBs compile the latest. And I've been having to go through individual repositories and identify those to pick which one goes on the DVD. If the author could say, for stable releases use this tag, for the latest use this branch or whatever, then it would be able to be automated.
Mm-hmm. So just to put it out there, PyBOMBs right now doesn't support that. So we can put that in the manifest, and I think that makes sense. But PyBOMBs, a recipe always points to one specific branch or tag or whatever. But it's not like you can choose stuff from a PyBOMBs recipe.
That could be a feature request in PyBOMBs to
Yes.
command line specify one of the tags in the manifest.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it uses.
I've actually stumbled across this because I wanted people to be able to install the rfnoc branch of UHD through PyBOMBs, and you can't do that.
Yeah. I'm actually using sed to edit the recipe files to get specific commits. So I run into the same problem.
So that sounds like something we want in PyBOMBs. Okay, so the other thing that I suggested we should have in PyBOMBs is that the archiving operation should be something that PyBOMBs can do itself, because it has all the knowledge about pulling in repositories. It already has that. So, so this whole archiving operation would be something that I feel PyBOMBs should be able to do by itself. Or maybe with some additional plumbing scripting around that. But the actual act of checking out a repository and putting it in an archive, I think that's something that PyBOMBs should be able to do itself. Is there any opinions on that?
It may not need to be in the PyBOMBs executable, but in a separate utility program that's part of PyBOMBs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, but then uses the PyBOMBs Python modules that are in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just thinking a situation where somebody stumbles upon that. So,
what do people think about this whole archiving concept? Just like make a copy of everything that we decide goes into CGRAN, into like its own copied repository.
Personally, I think having a GitHub user like CGRAN and having a fork of all of the GitHub repos or a manually pushed one for things that aren't in GitHub, that's great because it's all in one spot. And if the original stuff goes away, we have a place we can point at. And in fact, maybe we push everything to GitHub in terms of the recipes, so that even though somebody has their project on another site, we mirror it on GitHub, and the GitHub repo is the one that gets the pull, so that we can get the benefit of the performance and uptime.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So if people are running stuff on their own servers, they won't have to pay for the bandwidth, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. So
if they're already on GitHub, then it doesn't matter. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'd volunteer to amend PyBOMBs to do this, and I can probably also set up the CGRAN user and try and get an archive running. Okay, so assuming that we have a manifest file in place, sort of the main work is to actually generate this website. And Nathan already has something, has a mock-up, so there is something we can use. And Nathan, you wrote it all in Python, right?
Yeah, it's the script, the site itself uses Jekyll. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a static site generator. It's written in Ruby, but there's no Ruby in here.
Okay, so it just uses it as a backend, and all the intelligence is in the Python code. I think that makes sense simply because we use Python everywhere else, and it might tie into our stuff cleaner. So I think it's a good choice.
So would this utility work by parsing all of the PyBOMB's recipes and then going and fetching the manifests out of the repositories and then finally generating the pages? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so I can quickly go through this because I think it should be fairly understandable. So it's the static site generator. So basically I have this script that runs every once in a while that basically clones all of the, here, there's in GR modules here I have just a file for every module that CGRAN knows about. And so if you look at these, it's just basically a table in Markdown of all of the things. So this would basically be replaced by the PyBOMB's recipe, right? And then there's this Ruby script that lives out as its own project. There's no Ruby in this repository, and it just reads these files and generates. There's a, let's see. There's this liquid templating engine that it uses. So this is just a template with HTML in it, and you have stuff that says, like here's the templated stuff. So it reads stuff from that table and just makes a HTML web page. That's it. And so you have these static pages, and they're all linked together.
Cool.
So if we wanted to use Jekyll, we would basically just have to have something that copies over all of the JSON whatever files, and having something that would read JSON instead of that Markdown would be pretty good. But if we wanted to use Jekyll, you need to have some tool that makes these files. That's basically it, and it just copies them from each project's manifests.
I mean, converting JSON to Markdown seems like it's very
it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, Python's JSON module is pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
And if we have PyBOMBs in a state where it can, generate this entire archive, and then we already have everything, on disk for scanning and cloning, etc.
So the current shortfall in PyBOMBs that I found was, if you look at the PyBOMBs recipes, you can't tell exactly radio versus not GNU Radio stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Specifically, usually you can look for the GR- prefix, but there's exceptions to that, like GQRX, and SDR rangelove, or whatever it is you call it.
Yeah.
GNSS SDR, yeah.
So I think the only way around that is to amend the recipes with a field that excludes this from CGRAN, for example. And that is it's not as bad as it sounds, I think, because those are stuff like boost and ice and stuff that we need as dependency for GNU Radio usually. So I think that would be the easiest way to filter non-CGRAN related recipes out of there.
I agree, though, that if PyBOMBs has the intelligence to create the backup archive of all of these, then it has everything it needs to, with this added scripting, create the site. And so we can...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that there should be no problem with the site itself being on GNURadio.org and having a system that runs a cron job to do both the archiving and the site update.
Yeah, so PyBOMBs can currently run operations on all, and I think it has a fetch operation. So we can already make a local copy of all of these. It's just a matter of figuring out which ones are GNU Radio out of tree projects.
Right.
Yeah, but I think the only way around that is to put it into the recipe. I can't see any other way to
I agree.
PyBOMBs to distinguish. Sorry, Jonathan.
I said I agree.
Okay. Yeah, and we don't want to make backups of boost and ice and whatever. Anyways. So. Okay, so Nathan, quick question: what does GRIST stand for? Or...
The GNU Radio indexed source tree.
Okay. So, how about we pull that into the GNU Radio GitHub space and then use that as a baseline or as something to start from? I mean, because it is already pretty far actually, and we can leave out the additional features such as I don't know, search modules, etc. for the beginning, and then reiterate on that.
Yeah, sure.
So, would you be willing to help set that up on the like on GNU Radio org/CGRAN or whatever, like a simplified version of that without the.
Yeah, I can help with that. I guess the immediate question is where should it be hosted? I don't know. Is there? Go ahead.
I can put it pretty much anywhere you want. We can put it on a host, as part of the GNU Radio infrastructure. It would probably, because it's ultimately going to be running all this archiving and all that, would be a separate instance from the main GNURadio.org Redmine. But
Right.
we can work all that out. But we can whatever infrastructure you need, we can create.
Okay.
So I think in future calls we'll probably be iterating on the GRIST. That'll probably be the main thing we need to work on. So is there someone who can help with making this a bit making the whole the looks like cosmetics a bit nicer, clean it, like give it a nicer template or whatever?
Yeah, if anyone is good with like
Web
actual design, because I'm not, that'd be great.
I think SDR and web design are mutually exclusive.
Actually,
Yeah.
we should make it just pure ASCII stuff until someone complains, and then they're the volunteer. Yeah, it's we need to find someone who's good with that, because the stats.radio.org is could also.
Oh, it's basically unusable.
I mean, I don't want to complain too loudly because then I'll be the one.
I complained and then he gave me access, so I can't complain anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna put out a call on the mailing list, and I don't know. I just hope someone finds it in their hearts to spend some minutes doing web design. I mean, if you're good at it, it's probably not even that hard. I assume. Maybe it's really hard, but I don't think so. Okay, so we'll just use this design to start with, and get it up and running.
Yeah, if anyone has any immediate feedback on this, we can probably make quick changes, but looking at it, I don't see anything. My design eye is not good enough to say, like, oh, this needs to be changed.
Yeah.
It's not so much a low-level design issue, but I would break this up into applications and blocks, in different sections, so that somebody looking for something isn't basically going through the list alphabetically.
Yeah.
Think of a new GNU Radio user who's all excited. He has his RTL SDR and wants to go download stuff to go play with, and he's presented with this.
Okay, yeah, that brings up something that we didn't discuss, is the type that I have here. That was sort of an ad hoc decision for me at the time. And I don't know, I guess there's a lot of just blocks, and there's some applications, and there's some oddballs like event stream. Is this a useful description, or?
So I think if we just make it tags, and then people can put in whatever they like, that would probably be enough.
That would be more scalable.
I think so too.
But I'm not sure that you could automate breaking this page into sections using those tags or not.
Well, it depends on how powerful this Jekyll thing is. Maybe, I mean, searching, sorting, and filtering are really important here, and they get more and more important the more out-of-tree modules we have. And filtering and searching is if you have tags in there, then your search, I don't know, your web display engine, however that is designed, can make use of that. Maybe it's really easy, or at least maybe not necessarily easy, but maybe Jekyll has all the functions we need. We just need to figure out how to pull them in when it.
So if we look at the inspiration for this page, it's the open embedded layers thing, and they use Twitter's Bootstrap, which is like a CSS.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call it, but I looked at it and it was too complicated for my lack of design or lack of web programming, so I decided not to use it. But if anyone is like curious to get started with web programming, then they can try redoing this with Bootstrap, and it should come with that feature to do that.
So I mean, there's somebody who's not on the call, but John Malsbury is pretty good with Bootstrap, so we may ask him to see if he's willing to help in this area.
Okay.
I'll ask him.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think a good plan now is so Chris, you'll modify the out of tree modules, and we'll just add an example manifest to 2 or 3 out of tree modules just to see how that works. And I'll set up PyBOMBs to do the archiving, and Nathan, you sort of cut out everything out of Grist that we don't need right now, and we'll pull Grist into the GNU Radio GitHub space and try and set up a alpha or beta, whatever we want to call it, CGRAN, as fast as possible. And then I think once it's live and we can sort of show it to people, then we might have an easier time getting help in from others. Maybe we can find someone finally to do some designing, but maybe we'll also find people who are good with, other people other than John Malsbury, because he already does a bunch of stuff. Maybe we can find someone new who's good with web engine stuff. I mean, I'm happy if John wants to do this. I'm just hoping that we can find more people to help us.
Yeah, sure. And let me know when you need some actual infrastructure for GNURadio.org and for running this. Once you guys sort of get something working, on your own stuff.
Okay.
It's pretty quick to set up a server and give you guys access, and then you can set it up live that way.
So if I go to CGRAN.org, what happens? I'm just going to do this.
I think it's showing the down page right now.
So who owns that domain?
I was under the impression it was George Nichus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, Nichus. Yeah.
Nichus.
Okay, so he actually owns the domain as well? Or,
Yeah, he does.
I believe so.
So George actually wanted to be on this call, but he didn't show up. Or maybe I hope he wasn't waiting for an invite or something, and I forgot him. That would be...
Yeah, he just sent an email or a message asking to be brought in.
Oh.
Awkward.
It's all right.
I actually got another email from someone. Can you add me to the Hangout? Jesus. I'm so sorry, everyone.
We can either blame time zones on this or daylight savings time.
It can't be me.
Just blame Google Plus. It's easy enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. There we go.
Yeah, I just have too many windows open. I just lose track of stuff. Ta-da. Okay, but I think that is a good plan to get started. Does anyone have anything they want to add at this point?
Yeah, hello?
Ravi.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah,
You're live on air.
So, yes. I've been following the, the broadcast since you guys started it. Been trying to join it, but the thing is, first thing I want to discuss is about the manifest file which you're talking about. You can do this using Python itself.
Yeah, we know. We've said that.
Instead of JSON, we can do this in Python. You know, there's a project called Pelican.
Oh.
It is a static site generator.
Okay.
And they use.
Can I just interrupt you for a sec?
Yeah.
So, quick question. So, yes or no question. Are you suggesting that we use a Python file instead of a JSON file for the manifest?
Yes, because
okay, I think we've already agreed that we're gonna be that. I think we already agreed that JSON format is most portable and something that we want to use. So, unless you have really good reason to bring up Python instead of JSON.
Yeah.
You have one?
Hello? Yeah. Okay. So you might want to check this project called Pelican. Pelican is a static site generator.
Okay, yeah, but what is the precise advantage?
Yeah, so you just like how I've seen this PyBOMB recipes, how they're created now. So you just give the variables and it passes out that, and it automatically does everything for you instead of JSON switching over to JSON, because this is PyBOMB, so everything is in Python.
Yeah. So Chris has already volunteered to write the manifest file. So I don't really want to change that format right now, and I'm sorry to be so abrupt with you at this point. But also because the manifest only holds a couple of small fields like email address, etc., etc. I don't really see the advantage of a Python file over a JSON file.
JSON. Okay. Okay.
So I think the advantage of a JSON file is that for projects like GQRX, we don't want Alexander to have to write a Python file when the JSON is smaller and easier to pull out of GitHub by programmatic means. And there's tons of good JSON modules for basically every language for other people who want to write other utilities to parse those manifests.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. I don't think we want to lock ourselves into a format that one particular web, program is using.
Yeah, so I think he's referring to Pelican. Looks like it's basically a Python version of Jekyll. So as far as the actual templating engine that generates the HTML pages, it's possible that Pelican would work.
For the site generator also, plus we can use the same style of creating the manifest also, because there is whenever someone wants to create a Pelican blog or Pelican site, they'll have to create a Pelican conf.py.
Right. So basically,
it's not basically a Python file. It just has some key value pairs, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and I see what it is. It's the same thing as Jekyll. So the thing is, it doesn't matter what the active tree project has, because we're not actually generating we're actually using the information inside the project to create whatever will be eventually go into the templating engine. So it doesn't matter what the format inside the project is. So we might as well stick with JSON for that. As far as Pelican, it's possible we can use Pelican. Right now, I already have some work in Jekyll, so I'm tempted to stick with Jekyll. If you want to work together, you can try to come up with something that works in Pelican, and that would be fine. See what that looks like.
Sure.
So Ravi, are you volunteering to help with the grist?
Sorry.
Are you volunteering to help with the web page generating software?
Yes, and also yes, I would do that. I'll be helping with that.
Cool. So you just sent me an email, so I have your contact info, and I'll coordinate getting that together.
Okay.
Hey.
And regarding this archive which you were talking about earlier, Vim scripts does the same thing. They have different archive and they have a backup, just like how we are talking about. So I don't think it will be a difficult task to create.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be difficult. We'll just have to sort of adapt it to the PyBOMB specifics. It's And we already have the, I don't know if you've actually read the PyBOMB's source code, but we already have a couple of mechanisms in there to check out and pull an update repository. So Ravi, can you send me an email so I don't have your email address? I only have your G+ thingy.
Okay, I'll do that after the Hangout.
Well, thanks. Okay, George, do you have anything you want to add?
So honestly, I just joined at the end here because I was stuck on another call, so I missed the majority of things. So I'll probably have to like catch some summary and then probably provide some feedback on that.
Okay. Yeah, is there something specific you wanted to bring up?
No, not really. I just want to kind of listen in and see, where things are heading and see if there's any places I can help.
So are you good with web design?
No. That's why I use Track. Yeah.
George, can you confirm you own the CGRAN.org domain name?
I do, yes.
Okay, thanks.
No problem, and I can keep paying for it. That's not really an issue. It's not expensive, and so whenever we have some new server for it, I can point the A record to it. That won't be a problem.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm just gonna assume that you and Jonathan work out the details on the domain stuff once we have something presentable.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
What is just real briefly, what is the current front end plan? Since you asked about web development.
So Nathan, have you seen Nathan's mock-up of?
I did. Yes, he sent it to me.
Okay, so we're gonna. So that is. So I mean, Nathan, you can just explain it yourself in a sentence or two what you did.
Yeah. So I think at a high level, we're gonna stick with what I have right now. It'll be changed a little bit, but there weren't any large objections to what it currently looks like.
Right. Okay. Well, that sounds good.
So it's just a static site generated by some templating engine.
I think the main difference to the old CGRAN is that we want to have 0 elements that are manually maintained. And have it all automatically generated from the PyBOMB's archives, etc., etc.
Sure. So the main difference here is that where CGRAN was before was providing some, let's say, like installation instructions, something like that. But that's basically managed by PyBOMBs right now, since PyBOMBs handles all of the, let's say, installation process and dependencies, things like that.
Right. And also people use their own GitHub pages, like readme.markdown files, to provide all those infos.
Right.
So the actual wiki element of CGRAN is no longer necessary. So,
right. Yeah. The only thing I would add, Nathan, is to somehow do some like basic organization. I know you have like a type, but then to potentially like sort by that, because I know that one issue that we had with CGRAN was eventually it was just some like massive list of projects, and it was very hard to figure out what was what. So maybe if there's just some like grouping.
Yeah, we just discussed having tags and then the ability to sort and filter by those.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's probably what you need. Okay, so I think that's enough for right now. I don't think we can process much more right now, but I think this is already a good start. So so George, can I just shall I just put you on have you coordinate with Nathan, etc. about stuff you want to help join in the efforts with the new
Definitely.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So, yeah.
And if there's any existing information from CGRAN that you guys want or need, like for example, there's a pretty large user database, right? So I can certainly migrate that database of users over to the new version. So that way, either you can pull the email addresses and say like, "Hey, everybody, the new site is launched," or if there does eventually have some like login registration, which there doesn't seem to be just because PyBOMBs is so open, but at least you have like some user base.
Okay, great. I think we're gonna need more than this call. But I'd like to sort of let things get started. So whenever we do the next call, there's already some ongoing efforts, and maybe some sub-working groups have formed. So I'll be sort of pinging you all the details and try and monitor what's going on.
Yeah, so I just want to, I guess, get organized. So I've been tasked with, I guess, redoing the front end a little bit, and I see there's at least 2 people excited about working on that as well. That's Alfredo and Robbie, and
and George and Robbie.
And George, yes. So is there anyone else? I'll probably send those guys an email to try to get organized. Is there anyone else that wants to be on that?
I'd be interested in helping out, although I'm not a web developer.
It's Chris. Chris? Okay. I suppose I can just send it to everyone here. Oh,
Chris?
Neil, sorry.
Oh, okay. Hey, Chris, I thought it was you, but how do I pronounce your last name properly?
Couth, and it's uncouth to mispronounce it.
Okay. A future reference. Okay, yeah. So Nathan, you'll be sort of the head. You'll be the lead on this whole web thing. Once you've got it sort of into a place where it can do something useful, you'll coordinate with Jonathan about getting it set up on the web server. And Jonathan, you and George sort of figure out the domain transfer. And I'll be working on PyBOMBs to get the archiving feature done. So when I have that done, Grist will have a local backup of the archive to run its own scripts over. Did I forget anything? I don't think so.
Are we going to have CGRAN T-shirts?
Absolutely.
That's where I was hoping it would eventually get to.
But we need a logo first. I'll task Marcus for that. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining. That was very constructive, very useful. I think we'll have a great CGRAN by GRCon, and
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
are
it.
there deadlines?
I'm sorry?
Are there any deadlines?
No, but I just said we'll probably have a good CGRAN by GRCon, and that's always in October or September.
September.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think it's not a deadline or anything, but if we have something nice to present at the conference, that's always nice. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm stopping the broadcast.